Hello everyone, back into today's first video. We're going to have a look at the ECM2F 30-day model for today's first video. That's going to take us through into the second half of February, and we're looking at the temperature and precipitation anomalies for the UK and for the rest of Europe as well for the next 4 weeks. So I'll get on that for you very shortly. Just to say that the second video coming up later on this afternoon will be the week to 10 day video update. That will include all of regular features, and we'll be having a look at what's going on in terms of those forecasts of a sudden stratospheric warming into February as well in that video. Right, the Hungarian Met Office for this one. So a big thank you to them for supplying the charts. We can't show you the mean sea level pressure anomalies or 500 millibar heights with this. We can only show you temperature and precipitation anomalies, but you can get a rough idea of what the model is forecasting from its temperature and precipitation anomalies. Right, so begin with week 1 temperature anomalies. Week 5 for the year takes us from the 27th of January to the 2nd of February. We find that the coming week has significantly warmer than average temperature anomalies again across this eastern part of Europe and into west of Russia. Temperature anomalies there are going between 6 and 10 degrees above average, exceptionally mild once again. Most other parts of Europe are looking very substantially milder than average as well, right the way through to the west of Europe. We have temperature anomalies widely between 3 and 6 degrees above average. One or two areas, southern Germany, for example, northern Spain, southern parts of Finland, those areas again between 6 and 10 degrees above average. In the extreme northwest, not quite as warm as that for the UK and Ireland, except in the far southeast of England anyway. Temperatures are nearer 1 to 3 degrees above average for Ireland and the UK in the week ahead. Iceland looks colder than average in the extreme north of sort of Arctic Scandinavia, and Russia looks colder than average as well. Down in the Mediterranean, it's a mild scene or a warm scene for most parts of the Med, so right way from Spain, Portugal in the west, over to Greece and Turkey in the east, and all points in between coming out between 3 and 6 degrees above average quite widely. Precipitation anomalies look quite wet in the week ahead from the 27th of January to 2nd of February. For much of northern, central and western Europe. So from Poland and Germany back in towards Scandinavia and then over to France, much of the northern part of the UK anyway. Rainfall anomalies or precipitation anomalies in the week ahead are wetter than average. Central northern parts of Norway looks drier than average, otherwise the rest of Scandinavia, sort of Sweden, Denmark and into the Baltic areas all coming out with above average precipitation there. And then down to Mediterranean, it's quite a dry scene though, so we've got Portugal looking fairly wet, but other than that, most parts of the Med do look pretty dry, especially this central basin of the Med, so the holiday islands like the Balearic Islands and Corsica and Sardinia, Malta, those sort of areas looking relatively dry in this week. So with warm temperatures, warm and average temperatures and dry and average conditions, it should be a very nice week for anybody going down to the Med for a bit of a winter holiday. Looks a little bit more unsettled out towards Turkey, but Greece is generally drier than average. It looks like the basic pattern is pretty westerly, high pressure through much of the Med and low pressure up here. Bringing the unsettled conditions and the jet stream into northern, central and western parts of Europe. We go through to week 2, which is week 6 for 2020, but week 6 for our week 6 for 2020, but week 2 for our forecast period. This one takes us from the 3rd to the 9th of February. Another very mild week coming up for most parts of Europe. Scandinavia going down closer to average, but still on the milder side of average. I suppose that would be a bit colder compared to what we've had across Scandinavia through most of this winter though. Then we see that this western part of Europe has temperature anomalies of around 1 to 3 degrees above average. And then from Germany and Poland eastwards back to west of Russia and down to the Black Sea, we generally see the temperature then between around 3 and 6 degrees above average. So a very mild week again across many central and eastern parts of Europe, a little bit closer to average, a little bit nearer normal in the far north and west, but overall another very mild week coming up there for the first full week of February. Down in the Med, again, it looks significantly mild average really through most parts of the Mediterranean, with temperature anomalies between around 1 and 6 degrees above average. Precipitation wise, this is how we look for this week. So a bit drier out in west of Europe actually, so for parts of UK, Ireland, France, Spain, Portugal and into the central part of the Med. Overall it looks a little bit on the drier than average side, not as unsettled through this week, more of an anticyclonic influence. It's really the central excuse me, really the central and eastern parts of the country of Europe that look wetter than average, just a little bit above average with precipitation. Overall, I think this is a rather drier week coming up for the first full week of February. Much of the Mediterranean, especially the central and western parts of the Med, do look reasonably dry as well. And we go through to week 3, week 7 for 2020, week 3 for our forecast period. Again, this one takes us from the 10th through to the 16th of February. It's another very mild week coming up. Warmest anomalies this time transfer back to the north of Europe, where again we see anomalies of around 3 to 6 degrees above average, really from sort of Poland and north parts of Ukraine northwards up into the Baltic and then over to the Scandinavian peninsula. That's where the warmest anomalies to average are, but all parts of Europe really look above average. No sign of any cold weather whatsoever, if this is right, up to the middle of February. To all those little hints we gave within the shorter range model output of various cold snaps and northerly outbreaks into the early part of February. The ECM extended model is not interested in that whatsoever. It just wants to keep this exceptionally mild winter going. I mean, overall, most parts of Europe are actually coming away with temperature numbers around 1 to 3 degrees above average. So not that exceptional, except it follows on from what has been an exceptionally mild winter. The warmest numbers, as I say, up in this northern part of Europe. Looks more unsettled again for Northern Europe as well in this week. Again, precipitation only from the 10th, 16th of February. Scandinavia into parts of the Low Countries, northern Germany, UK, Ireland, above average rainfall. So it looks like low pressure, if anything, is driving back in from off the Atlantic. Weaker signals elsewhere in Europe, but generally the south of Europe is looking rather drier, so presumably we're going back to a sort of pattern of high pressure sitting across southern Europe through much of the Med, keeping them mainly dry and potentially very mild or even quite warm. Low pressure with the jet stream up in the northwest of Europe, and broadly the pattern of the winter goes on in between many central parts of Europe, forecast to be close to average with precipitation. And then finally we get through to week 4, week 8 for the year, week 4 for our forecast period, which takes us from the 17th to 23rd of February. And surprise, surprise, no change. It's still going for a very mild week again, even the second half of Europe. Nothing cold in whatsoever here, right way to the second half of February. Many central, eastern, northern parts of Europe, again, those anomalies are 3 to 6 degrees above average. Exceptionally mild winter continues more or less to the end of meteorological winter, which finishes of course on the last day of February. Out in the west it does look closer to average, not quite as mild to average, but still above average to Ireland, UK, France, Spain, Portugal, widely 1 to 3 degrees above average through those areas. There's no colder than average temperature anomaly anywhere on this map except way out in the far north of the Atlantic Ocean over there. That's where it's a little bit colder than average, but otherwise looks very, very mild again. Precipitation anomalies weakening as they usually do when we get to week 4, but generally the far north of Europe looks a bit wetter than average still. That includes Ireland and the UK and much of Scandinavia as well. So presumably we're still bringing in the low pressure from off the Atlantic. We're still bringing the jet stream in with its southern Europe. Again, weaker signals, but hints through southern Europe, but it's a bit drier. So high pressure probably continues across south of Europe through Mediterranean. Low pressure in the north of Europe. In between, there's no signal. So, if the ECM is right, we get to the second half of February. We don't get any notably cold weather anywhere in Europe. A shorter range rollout, but you'll see this within today's second video update, but will be coming up later on this afternoon. The shorter range output is very much hinting at northerly winds, particularly across northern Europe, as we go into early February. Wants to pull down a trough of low pressure and bring winter biting into much of northern, central and eastern Europe. The UK and Ireland is on the periphery of that, really, but may get a shot from the north at some time next week. So it's a bit of a confused picture, and it looks like we have the shorter range versus the longer range here, and we'll see which one is right. Maybe it's the shorter range that's going over the top with this northerly next week, and we won't get as potent a trough digging into northern Europe as the models are currently suggesting. We shall see, but it is interesting about the long range ECM is definitely very set on keeping this exceptionally mild winter going throughout most of February. I mean, we don't get to the very end of February there, but still one more week of February left. But up to like the third week of February anyway, the end of the third week of February, absolutely no sign of any cold weather doing anywhere in Europe, really. So we shall see what happens in the days ahead. Remember, it's just a snapshot. It doesn't necessarily mean that the model is right. It could look different next week. It's a snapshot what model is shown today. But today, the ECM wants to keep this exceptionally mild winter going, not just for the UK, but through all parts of Europe as well. Right, we'll be back later on this afternoon with your week to 10-day video update, and that will include all of the latest in terms of what's happening in the stratosphere, and of course we shall be looking at the chance of some northerly winds next week. The ECM Extended isn't keen on that at all, but we shall look at what the shorter range is showing in today's second video update, so come back for that then. That's all for now though, and thanks for watching.